Welcome down the rabbit hole, friends. You're joining me back here for chapter 2, 3, and maybe a little bit more of Britney Spears' The Woman in Me. I have to be honest with you guys, I've gone a little bit further in the book, and I feel like for me, this memoir is a little bit groundbreaking. And here's why. Because I really feel like what Britney Spears is handing over to us, what she's showing us, is a picture of like a certain form of neurodiversity. In my opinion, Britney Spears, all the things that are going on with her mental health, lends to the idea that her existence falls under the category of being like a very neurodiverse person, right? Okay. It does look like she's dealing with some mood fluctuations up and down. People may call it bipolar disorder. But there are so many other parts to this story that we can only get from her. One of the things I love about Britney's memoir is she came out recently when people were giving a lot of backlash to Justin Timberlake, and she said, I want to let you guys know that's not what I want. I didn't write this book to get back at people. I didn't write this book so that you would go after the people I talk about. And there's the police coming for me and Spookly because he's chewing up everything in the house. Okay, I didn't write this book so that you would go after the people that I speak about. I didn't write this book to give people backlash. I literally wrote the book because people have been talking about me my whole life, and I just want to tell things from my side of the story. This is her version of events, and I don't feel like she's really like aiming an arrow at anyone. Even as I've gone on, and yes, she does have negative things to say about people, I don't feel she's doing it to be like, you should go after these people. I don't like them. She's just stating like the facts from her side of the railroad tracks, right? Like, yeah, other people's opinion might be different, but they've been putting it out there for years and years and years. She never has. And this is her chance to say, this is what I saw going on around me. I was dealing with all of these other factors, and then I would come home and have these really sad interactions with my family. There's a long line of events that led up to me having depression, having breakdowns, and there are reasons why things happened the way that they did. And more than anything, what I'm seeing in the book is a tale of many women in her family being silenced, pushed around, controlled, and treated like any kind of difference or addiction or just general mental health issue they display should result in being put on total lockdown. And it may not always be in the form of going to an asylum like Britney's grandmother and like what happened to Britney. Within this family structure, it is normalized that if women have any kind of deviation from the norm, like there's something wrong with them. And we need to wrap this up real quick in a package and like put it to the side. That is a lifelong part of Britney Spears' story. The memoir, in my opinion, is like honest and raw. It's short, sweet, to the point. It also kind of gives me like a peek into how Britney thinks about the world right now. One of the underlying themes, which I think served her very well in becoming an international superstar, is that she has no sense of danger or fear or shame. She wants to get up and show the world what she's made of. She is fearless in a lot of ways, and many people would equate this to some form of mania. We can see it from a very early age with Britney. We can see it throughout many of her family members' lives as well. And from my point of view, it's like people loved her for it when she was making millions of dollars. Her parents especially loved it about her when she got up on stage and danced the dance and brought the money home. But then when she got a little bit older and some of that lack of fear or boundaries resulted in her going out with Paris Hilton and spending her money wildly, they decided to shut her down. And is that really fair to this person who you've allowed to live their life and shine and show everyone in the world what they're made of, but then the moment comes that they're not serving you anymore and you need to rein them back in and create a box for them to live in? I had some people write to me and say that like Jamie Spears, Britney's dad, he only wanted to protect her. And I would say that there's like a part of that that's true, right? I think a lot of people who were involved in Britney's conservatorship, it started with wanting to protect her, right? But the evidence that has come out recently has shown us that over time, it did become like a money-making scheme for a lot of people. And Britney was given a lot of rules that didn't seem to even need to be there. You know, things like being unable to go to the spa while she worked her ass off in Las Vegas, performing night after night, being away from her kids Monday through Friday, and she wrote about not being able to like go get a massage or get her nails done when she wanted to. Like, come on, that's not appropriate. That's not what a conservatorship is for. We can compare this most recently to the legal conservatorship that was put into place for one of my favorite like Disney actresses of all time, Amanda Bynes. I always thought of her like she was going to be the next I Love Lucy kind of star. She was amazing as a child. And she recently went into a conservatorship. It was very difficult to watch her deteriorate. And yet at the same time, I wanted what was best for her. And her conservatorship looked a lot more like a situation in which her parents were really just trying to help her. And the whole idea was they would only do it for a period of time until she had established like a better flow for her life. And then they would hand everything back over to her. They have not sought out to speak about it in the press. They have stayed like behind the veil of publicity. The parents don't come out, the siblings don't come out and talk about Amanda very much. And it really looks like they were doing the best they could to protect what money she had left. And that is not what we saw with Britney Spears. The money was being used for people like Jamie Lynn Spears and others in the family to go on lavish vacations, to use the homes that Britney had purchased with all of the money she made. And no, I don't think that that is fair. I think there came a point in which they were taking advantage of Britney to the utmost. All right, I've ranted on long enough. Let's talk about chapter 2. Okay, chapter 2 of Britney's book is a lot about the other people besides her mom and dad who were around her during her childhood. Britney's older brother, Brian, was born in 1977 when her parents first bought their small place, a 3-bedroom ranch house in Louisiana. Britney's mom was a teacher, but her father worked in the oil fields, and his job was like up and down. He may have a job for 3 months, and then he wouldn't have work for a period of time. Britney recognizes that this was extremely stressful for her father, and he started drinking heavily. It's interesting that Britney is so empathetic towards her brother about all of the issues that arose from their father's alcoholism. She states that when Brian was little, when he was a baby, like so many hard times occurred. First off, there's a whole story about her father missing Brian's first birthday, that the alcoholism with Jamie Spears resulted in him going AWOL a lot of the time. He would just disappear for days on end. They didn't know what was happening, and this occurred during Brian's first birthday party. And that was when Britney Spears' mom first had enough. She left Jamie and went to go stay with her mom, but Jamie's father, June, that guy we heard about before, intervened and spoke to Lynn, convinced her to come back, and Jamie and Lynn rekindled their relationship. According to Britney, things got a little bit better. And this was mainly because Jamie Spears was able to start like a welding and construction business, which gave him more like steady work, and he started doing really well overall. They had a little bit more income, and I think that Jamie clearly develops a little bit more pride in himself, so he doesn't need to turn to the bottle as much. Jamie, I had no idea about this, also started a gym in their house where bodybuilders would come over and do like weightlifting. And I mean, Britney, she ended up seeing these people coming in and out of their property. She may have also been like involved in the gym. Maybe that's where she got some of her inclination towards like doing gymnastics and working out and being really strong. They were doing really well finally in their little town. They were respected, and this meant a lot for Jamie. Eventually her mom opened a daycare. So they've got a lot going on. They're starting all these family businesses, which is interesting. The main part of this chapter that I find to be really important to Britney's story is that Britney talks about these other women in her family who meant a lot to her. Specifically, she starts with her cousin, Laura Lynn, okay? Laura Lynn and Britney were only like a few months apart. They became really, really good and close friends. Britney calls them twins. They were like twins in many ways. She was like a sister to Britney, and they were extremely close. And Laura was always super proud of Britney for everything she accomplished, and that meant a lot to Britney. You can tell it was like a big chunk of her heart to have this cousin be so proud of her. Britney was also really close to her great grandmother, who was Jean's mother. Her name was Lexi, and Britney describes her as being like incredibly beautiful. I think she says wicked beautiful, and that she was so much fun. And she also states that her great-grandmother was married 7 times, and she really disliked her son-in-law, June. So it kind of all fit in with how Britney was feeling about the world. Britney says that she and Lexi were like extremely close. They would do sleepovers, they would watch movies together, and there are so many joyful memories of her time with Lexi. It sounds like Britney was kind of all around it because, you know, her parents seem really busy, right? They're running businesses. So it does sound like she was spending time with other family members, Lexi being one of them. And this is where Britney lets us know that something really sad happens in her life because Lexi takes her out to rent a movie. You know, she's an older woman, and on the way back from the movie theater, they just like run into, I don't know if it was like a flagpole or something. She's just not a very good driver. She runs into the flagpole, and because of that, Britney's parents are like, something is wrong with Lexi. Like, she's losing her mind. I'm sorry, Britney, you can't spend time with her anymore. So Britney's no longer allowed to go over. There were no more sleepovers, and they couldn't go driving together. And this was really sad for Britney. And Britney literally says, it wasn't even a bad accident, she told her mother. She says that Lexi was her favorite person. And her mom said, she's getting senile. It's not safe for you to be with her anymore. This is what Britney writes. After that, I saw her at my house, but I couldn't get in the car with her or have sleepovers with her ever again. It was a huge loss for me. I didn't understand how being with someone I loved could be considered dangerous. Wow. And this is a poignant like passage, right? Because we've seen this get flipped around and turned on Britney in her own life with her children and with other people in her family. So it's hard to see that she's already been experiencing this before everything happened with her own mental health. The rest of this chapter is about how when Britney was little, she really enjoyed hiding, specifically hiding in cabinets. People would look for her like, where's Britney? She was in the house. Where could she be? And they knew she liked to hide. But she said she would hide for really long periods of time until people were like, I'm not sure. Did she leave? I just don't understand. And then she would pop out and be like, here I am. She relates this to her life today. She writes, I wanted to hide, but I also wanted to be seen. Both things could be true. Crouched in the cool darkness of a cabinet, I felt so small I could disappear. But with everyone's eyes on me, and she's talking about when she would perform, I became something else, someone who could command a room in white tights belting out a song. I felt like anything was possible. So she's kind of saying she still has this dichotomy within her. Chapter 3. This chapter is about a really difficult time in Britney's life where her big brother Brian was involved in some kind of ATV accident and he had to be put in a body cast. Britney describes it as like every single bone in his body was broken, and that this caused her, like a complete shift occurred in her family and everyone's relationship to Brian. She does state that Brian kind of became more of a favorite, especially with her mom. And she says that goes on to be like Brian could get away with anything in life, but that also he became her favorite in a lot of ways. She became extremely close to him and would sleep at the foot of his bed while he was in this body cast. They set up like a little mattress for her to sleep next to him. She was so worried about him, and they became incredibly close because of this accident. And that's the gist of chapter 3. It's all about how her relationship with Brian expanded, and that the two of them, you know, it seems like there was some support back and forth, but that for her, she always wanted to protect. She had a deep sense of wanting to protect Brian because of what happened to him in this horrible, you know, devastating situation where she wasn't even sure if he was going to make it through. Okay, moving on to chapter 4. In chapter 4, we see another downward spiral for Jamie, right? So it's interesting that he gets to go through all these ups and downs. He has all these issues with addiction, but he doesn't get put into an asylum, right? Okay, so Jamie starts drinking really heavily again, and the business starts to fail. There was a huge stress of money issues on the family, and this led to a lot of chaos among everyone. During this time, Britney started to be more and more fearful about being around her dad. She says she never wanted to get into a car with him because he was often drunk and she could see that he was driving erratically. He was in his own world, according to Britney. That's a big part of what I sense about this part of the book, is that her dad's doing his own thing and doesn't seem to have a lot of concern about what's going on with others. She also gives him a lot of empathy here. She says, I understand he was really stressed out. There were major financial issues. This was really sad. And she talks about how Jamie faced a lot of abuse at the hands of his father, June. So she's not blind to any of that, which is interesting that she's able to say, these things happened to the people I love, and that's part of why they are the way they are today, and I can understand. Is Jamie doing the same for Britney? Is Lynn doing the same for Britney? Is Jamie Lynn doing the same? Are they having empathy for everything that Britney has been through? Because in this book, I think she's really putting out there, she's humanizing these people for us. And she didn't have to. She didn't have to say any of this. And she's really putting out there, this is what I see as causing my dad to be the way that he was. She writes, "My dad was reckless, cold, and mean with me, but he was even harder on Brian. He pushed him so hard to do well in sports that it was cruel. Brian's life in those years was much rougher than mine because our father put him through the same brutal regimen June had pushed on him. Brian was forced to do basketball and also football, even though he wasn't built for it. My dad could also be abusive with my mom, but he was more the type of drinker who would just go away for days at a time. To be honest, it was a kindness to us when he went away. I preferred it when he wasn't there." So sad. And once again, we see Britney giving all this grace to the people around her, and really she's putting out there things were harder on Brian than they were on me. I haven't seen that once from Jamie Lynn or Lynn, any of these other people in Britney's life. They have not spoken about Britney in this same tone. Just there's a selfishness that I've seen in the people around her that I don't see in this book from Britney Spears so far. So the rest of this chapter is all about the knockdown, drag-out fights that Lynn and Jamie would get into at night. So apparently, according to Britney, things were calm during the day, but Jamie would get really drunk and eventually pass out at night. And Britney and Brian, all the other kids, they would be in, I guess it was just Britney and Brian at the time, they would be in their room and they would just hear Lynn yelling at Jamie, just yelling repeatedly over and over. And Britney describes it some of the time Jamie would just be passed out and not even speaking to her, and Lynn would just be screaming. So we've always seen Lynn as this quiet, well put together, well-mannered woman. And Britney says at night it would be really hard for her to listen to her mom yelling and screaming. She writes, "I'd storm out into the living room in my nightgown and beg her, just feed him and go put him to bed. He's sick." She was arguing with this person who wasn't even conscious. She wouldn't listen. I would go back to bed furious, staring daggers at the ceiling, listening to her yell, cursing her in my heart. And it is here that I think Britney, this passage really rocks me, because I think it is all about the mother wound. I can really relate to this. I've talked to you about my own life. The idea that so many of us place a lot of responsibility on our moms, wanting our moms to be perfect, wanting our moms to do the right thing, and we don't even look at the other people around us who are causing so much pain. So Britney writes, "Isn't that awful? He was the one who was drunk. He was the one whose alcoholism had made us poor. He was the one passed out in the chair. But she was the one who ended up pissing me off the most. Because, at least in those moments, he was quiet. I was so desperate to sleep, and she wouldn't shut up." In spite of all the nightly drama, by day my mom made our home a place with friends that wanted to come by, at least when my father respected us enough to drink somewhere else. All the kids from the neighborhood came over. Our house was, for lack of a better word, the cool house. We had a high bar with 12 chairs around it. My mom was a typical Southern mom, often gossiping, always smoking cigarettes with her friends at the bar or talking with them on the phone. I was dead to all of them. The older kids would sit on the bar chairs in front of the TV and play video games. I was the youngest. Our house was a zoo. I was always dancing on the coffee table for attention, and my mom was always chasing after Brian when he was little, jumping over couches. "Britney, stop!" my mother would yell. "We have company. Just be nice. Be on good behavior." But I ignored her, and I would always find a way to get everyone's attention. Wow, I'm really struck by the idea that Britney is talking about her own relationship with her mother, the way that she held her mother up to such a high standard that she was angry with her mother when her father was failing the family, but her mom couldn't stand strong and be there for the kids in the way they needed her to be. And look what has happened in her own life, the way that her own children have aligned themselves with a father who, in my opinion, has not really been good for them in a lot of ways, who hasn't provided structure, who doesn't work hard, who gets all the money from their mother. But they hate Britney. They hate their mom for everything that's happened. Once again, you're seeing the generational trauma being passed down. I have to believe that Britney kind of wrote about this, thinking about her own situation. This book is really throwing me for a loop. Okay, this is the end of chapter 4. We will pick up again in chapter 5. I'm so glad that you were with me here today. I hope you'll join me again when we head down the next rabbit hole.